Steve, welcome to the Growth Guide podcast. And before we start, I want to share with the audience that this is, for now, my last long form conversation as the Growth Guide takes a little bit of a pivot. The realization as I build the businesses that I'm building, as I take the next steps in my evolution, is putting a pause on long form conversations and announcing as well something that you and I have been doing a little that we may be rebooting shortly in the future is the Fired Up conversations where we talk about financial independence. We talk about everything that we're going to talk about today. And we have a very similar view on money, which is going to come across in the conversation. And there's some areas that we look at differently. I go for fat/nuclear fire. You like the lean/barista fire. And so we're going to talk about all of that. For our listeners and our viewers who don't know you yet, Steve, can you tell them a little bit about yourself, including getting rich and getting off the grid while living in an Airstream? Over to you to give a brief bio about who you are, my friend.
Perfect. Thanks, Clint. And thanks for having me on. And I'm honored to be your last long form guest. I am 42, but I retired, and I use that term loosely. I achieved financial independence and quit my job at 35. I worked a 14-year career in information technology. And like many of you know out there who work in IT, you get paid well, which is great. I loved that part. But it also drains the life out of you. Did not especially like that part. So you have to really mesh the two and determine how much you are willing to take. And for me, from the first week of setting foot in the office, like right out of college, making no money, obviously, in college, I got my first job. I'm in this office. I look around, a bunch of people just kind of sitting there in a cube farm, just pedaling away with her keyboard, doing stuff, whatever. And I thought to myself, this is it? This is what it means to be a professional? And I have another 40, 45, 50 years of my life to do this? I don't think so. Now, at that point, I was only 24, maybe 25. By all means, I did not have anything figured out yet. All I knew was I did not want a long career of doing this stuff. So fast forward, I meet my wife about 8 years later, in my early 30s. She was a rocket scientist, like an actual rocket scientist. She wrote code for rockets. Very numbers oriented, very math oriented. So that was like a perfect match for me because I am neither of those two, but she is. Combine those two salaries. In 2014, we were making combined about $220,000 a year. Now, making that now is good. Making that almost 10 years, actually it is now, 10 years ago. Man, it's 10 years ago, isn't it? Yeah, so 10 years ago, that was,
my friend.
I know. In fact, we're celebrating our 10-year anniversary in October of this year. But that was really good money back then. So we had a decision to make. We were pulling in good money. We had good jobs. We were living in a low cost of living area, which was Tucson, Arizona at the time. So we could either live like rock stars, expensive meals, vacation homes, whatever, the high life, as it were, or we can save the vast majority of what we were making and quit our jobs, both of us, sell our homes, and move into an Airstream RV and travel the country for a living for as long as we want. Ultimately, we chose the latter. So we saved, and we'll get into the details a little bit later if you want, but we saved a lot of money. We retired. Well, I quit my job at 35. She worked another year after that because she felt guilty about leaving her job. And then we sold both of our homes, 95% of our possessions, hit the road in an Airstream. We did that for 3 years, finally settled down into an off-grid home here in the Arizona desert. And quite frankly, we just could not be happier.
So whenever our friends post get rich and get off the grid on Twitter, you're like, dude,
Done.
I did that a decade ago. Come on.
Yeah,
Like, stop trying to copy me. So what I thought we could do today is talk about what fire is, the different types of fire. You have your 6-step wealth template or blueprint that will timeline that will take people through, and then maybe talk about some of the habits that you talk about
Sure.
in the book. But I want to start with what I thought was one of the best openings in a book I've read in a while. So I'm going to read your opening, and I'm just
Okay.
going to let you take it away from there, Steve, because it was a beauty. And it's very Steve, as I've gotten to know you over the years, my friend. Listen up, Buttercup. I'm not here to tell you everything is going to be okay, and that if you believe in yourself and sing Kumbaya, everything around a campfire, great things will happen. That's not how life works. Yes, believing in yourself is great, but putting action behind that belief is how we achieve amazing things, such as becoming a millionaire. A hope without action is nothing but a wish. Millionaires don't get rich by wishing. Take us through that beauty of an opener.
Yeah, I almost didn't include that because that's kind of a harsh thing to say right off the bat. But then it's like, if people know me, they know that I want to capture their attention right off the bat with a hard truth. And that's exactly what that was meant to do. It's Getting rich is not about hopes and dreams. It's not about just thinking about it. Yes, mindset is important. You have to believe that it's possible for you. That's always going to be the very first step. 100% of the time. If you don't think it's going to happen, it's not. But if you think that it's going to happen and you take that next step by getting off your butt and actually doing the things to get you rich, to become a millionaire, that's what's going to make the difference. You have to put in the action. You can't just want it. Everybody wants, everybody wishes, everybody dreams. Those are easy. We all do that. But putting the action behind what we want, that's the hard part. And that's what the rest of my book went into teaching you how to do. Go from that mindset point, that wish, like, I want this, whatever it happens to be, if it's a millionaire or something different, whatever that is, keep that in your mind. But then what do you have to do step by step to actually get to that point? And sometimes it's helpful to work backwards. Sometimes it's not. It just depends on your goal. But yeah, that was my way of, I guess, setting the record straight from the very beginning. This is not a wishy-washy, I hope, I wish book. This is what I want, and this is exactly how I'm going to get there. That's what makes the difference.
I love it. And we're going to jump all over the place. That may be how I tend to do things. And so it
Same.
might not be chronologically from the book. So, because what I want to do is I want to start with what is fire and why do people want to achieve it? And what are the different types of fire? You know, pick a few of the ones you want to talk about that people can focus on, because there are different ways to go about this journey.
Sure.
Because then what we're doing is we're setting the audience up with, oh, hey, yeah, I want that. And then we'll get into, well, here's how you do it.
FIRE is an acronym that stands for Financially Independent Retire Early. Now, those are two very separate concepts. The financial independence part means you've accumulated enough wealth through savings and the stock market and real estate and whatever other investments that you have, where you never have to work a day in your life again. It covers your living expenses practically forever. So that's one part. And that should always be your goal. Even if you love your job, you couldn't imagine doing anything else. Your goal should still be to be financially independent, because that's going to give you options. Then that second part is the RE part, the retire early part. That's taking that next step. Early retirement definitely will not be for everybody, and I totally respect that. But that's taking the next step after achieving financial independence. It's like, okay, I'm done. I'm quitting my job and I'm going to do whatever I want for the rest of my life, whether I make money or not. So that's the concept of FIRE, financially independent, retire early. There's so many different ways to do it, like you alluded to, Clint. And you are more of a fat FIRE person. Fat FIRE means you want a more extravagant lifestyle. You want to be able to spend more money after quitting your job. Usually that means spending $100,000, $120,000, $150,000 a year going forward. So that's just more money, which means you might have to work a little bit longer to have those investments in place to enable you to spend that much money. I retired with the lean fire philosophy, which means I want out as soon as possible. I can't stand another working day of my life. I want out of this crap, and I want out now. That was me, no doubt about it. Which means I can quit earlier, like I did when I was 35, but that also means we're only spending at the time $35,000 to $45,000 a year. That's it. Now, when you're in an Airstream or travel the country for a living, you could pretty much live as cheap as you want. We didn't stay in campgrounds. We boondocked, which means we were out in the middle of nowhere. We had solar, we had water tanks, we had wastewater holding tanks. So every once in a while, we would pump in new water and dump out our waste, but then we would go right back out and live for free again. Again, not going to be for everybody. I get it. But that was the way that we did it. Lean fire means you are not spending a lot of money, but you get to retire a little bit sooner than you would have. And there are a couple other variations like barista fire and coast fire where you've built up enough investments where you can just let those investments continue to build over time, but then you still continue to work a less stressful job. For instance, a barista in a coffee shop, and that's what pays your regular expenses. Yep, exactly.
One would argue, Steve, that may be you look at your situation, you look at a lot of other financial bloggers or writers, and in some of them, a fair amount of what they're living off of is from their blogging, is from their writing, is from their content creation, not simply living off their investments. So it's a bit more of a barista fire, if you will.
Very true. And one thing that I've learned after the retire early part is how easy it is to make money out there. If you have marketable skills, somebody is going to want to pay you for those skills. It's just a matter of time. I mean, when you have a full-time job, you don't really respect those opportunities because you already have that income. You don't need to notice those things. But once you no longer do, oh my gosh, there's so many ways to make money out there, so many ways. And we've gotten involved in that now. So it's hard for me to even say that I am retired now because I'm a content creator. I do a lot of writing. I do podcasts. I mean, we make six figures doing what we want to do now, whenever we want to do it, because we have that freedom to make money. That's probably the most magical part of the concept of fire. It means you can achieve it, then you can reevaluate your life, what you want to do, where you want to go, the things that you want to be doing every day. And if something comes around where it's like, oh, this sounds super cool, I can do this for 6 months, I can make 50 grand or 100 grand or whatever, screw it, I'm going to do it, I'm going to try it. And if it works out, great. If it doesn't matter because you didn't need the money anyway.
Yeah, and that's a beautiful spot to be. And one of the takeaways as we work through some of the habits is what you realize is when you build that path to millionaire, you've got to grow your income. Your income is based on you, based on your skills. It's based on your abilities. People are willing to pay you what you're worth. And you develop that ability to increase your worth. So you develop the ability to learn how to be a copywriter, to learn how to be a podcaster, to learn how to do X, Y, Z. You just develop the ability to learn. And so that, I've always seen that in you, that's something I've built as one of my personal skill sets. And a lot of millionaires, that's what I see in them, is that continuous learning. That's right. You also develop the habits and the disciplines to get there. And so if you want to become a writer, if you want to become a podcaster, if you want to become a social media creator, then you have the habits and the discipline and the ability to learn to do it. So basically any path becomes open to you when you develop the habits that we're going to talk about in your book, which makes barista or fat or whatever fire you want completely available to you.
Achievable. Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So we've laid out what fire is. We've laid out what we want it. Let's talk a little bit nuts and bolts. You can get as deep as you want. You have the 6-step wealth building timeline. You want to take people through that at a high level, let them know, hey, here's what you got to think about on your journey to become a millionaire. It's not straight to zero to millionaire, there's some steps along the way.
Yep. And the details, I'm a don't sweat the details kind of guy, but there are a lot of details in this timeline that you really have to pay attention to. And in your journey to $1 million, accumulating $1 million or what, $10 million, whatever, it all starts with income all the time. Some income, somehow, some way, whether you run your own business or you work a 9 to 5 or you're robbing banks. I mean, whatever. I probably wouldn't suggest the latter, but money in is the first step always. Then that second step is creating an emergency fund so you don't go into debt when something unexpected happens. And that unexpected thing might be losing a job, or your roof springs a leak, or you get into a car accident, or God forbid, a medical something happens to you and you spend a couple nights in the hospital. That's $100,000 right there. Granted, you probably have insurance. Exactly. You should have health insurance to cover that, but it may not cover all of it. So that having that money in place, not invested in a separate savings account. We like to use Ally, but any savings account will work to keep that e-fund of at least 3 to 6 months, at least. When we retired, we had 2 years of cash. Do not necessarily recommend that for everybody. That's a lot of cash. But for us, it worked. But for at least 3 to 6 months of living expenses, so you don't have to worry about anything with that cash set aside, that is crucial, because that means you're not going to go into credit card debt if something happens. And then you have your long-term savings, your short-term savings and your long-term savings. So you want to take a vacation in 10 years. You're funneling a little money into that pot. You may not have those goals, and that's fine. But if you do, it's good to have those systems set up using automation. So your paycheck comes in and you're funding all these accounts automatically. You don't have to lift a finger. After that, we have investments. If you work a full-time job and a 401k, if you live in the United States, if a 401k is available to you, definitely take advantage of that. If a Roth IRA is available to you, take advantage of those accounts as well, because that is your long-term investment accounts. So you don't want to touch those. There are loopholes, but I don't recommend going through those loopholes. The idea is to let that money build. That money is there to sit. So when you do reach 62, you have this huge nest egg where it's like, man, I have all this money now that's just going to funnel to me. I could either live like a rock star or earmark it for an inheritance, whatever. The point is, it's your choice for those long-term investments. Next, short-term investments. I like brokerage accounts. I have a Vanguard brokerage account, investing in index funds and ETFs. Those just make it easy. I always recommend at least 90% of the money that you invest in the stock market, make them ETFs or index funds or a combination of both. 10%, if you do like higher risk investments like individual companies or cryptocurrencies, whatever, you could have fun with that 10%. I have no problem with that, Clint. No problem whatsoever. I know you are a bigger crypto guy than I am. And frankly, I'm not anti-crypto by any means, but to be 100% in crypto, you got to be really freaking high risk, which is good, which is fine, and have that emergency fund in case it all hits the fan, which I know you are a smart guy. But for the majority of people, you probably shouldn't be 100% anywhere, regardless of where it is. Crypto, Amazon, Apple, you shouldn't be 100% with anything. Diversification is good. And then once all that's in place, right? So you have your income, you have your emergency fund, you have your short-term and long-term savings, you have your long-term investments, you have your short-term investments with that brokerage account. That is the foundation of wealth building for 99.99% of people. Whether you own your own business or you're working a 9 to 5, that is how it happens, period. And then once that's in place, it's just kind of a waiting game until you've decided, okay, that's it, I'm out, or anything else that you want to do with your life. After 5, 10, 15 years of letting this process run, you're building up wealth. then it's like, okay, I get to choose when I retire early. I like my job now, but if that company gets bought by another company or a different boss comes in and he or she is a total asshole, it's like, I don't have to deal with this. I'm out of here. That's FU money. And that's what you will have once you go through this wealth building timeline, whether you want to retire early or not.
And let's talk about the power of that, because what I've always explained to people with FU money, it's not about the fact that you're going to say that or you're going to do that.
Yeah.
My view has always been that as a professional, I am going to be much better at my job if I have one. I've now retired as well. Well, we'll get into the details of that. But the idea is, if I am not dependent on the payment from someone, I'm more independent. And what that means is when I'm asked questions, when I'm pushed in a certain direction, I'm more comfortable pushing back. I'm more comfortable approaching it from a centered, valued-based lifestyle because I don't need you to pay me. So when something I believe is wrong, I'm more willing to push back. I'm more willing to stand up and fight for my team, fight for the company, fight for the right thing to do, which ultimately I think makes organizations better. I'm more willing to do those things if I'm not worried about whether I get my paycheck next week or not.
That is an incredible freedom to have. And that's the most common criticism that firees get is, well, what if I don't want to retire early? It just doesn't, I don't care. I don't have to do these things because I love what I do. But like you just said, Clint, it's about options. It's about having the option to quit, even if you don't, because things, my friends, things change so fast, so rapidly. You might like your life now. You might like your job now, and that's great. But if you don't have that money set aside, if you're not financially independent, then even if you like your job, guess what? You are dependent on that job. So if things go south, you are stuck unless you get another job somewhere else. So the more options you have, the more freedom that you have, the happier that you are going to be. You're going to be able to say no to those things that you don't want to do, that you may have felt obligated to say yes to before because you needed that income.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoy what you're hearing so far and want me to be able to get your favorite guests on this show, please do me a quick favor. Subscribe to the show and leave me a rating. The 30 seconds of your time will mean a ton to me.
That's even applicable for entrepreneurs, right? Like, I've left the workforce. I'm consulting with them for another month and a half. And then I'm on my own and I'm starting up businesses in the real estate world, development,
Yep.
buy, rehab, hold, indefinite timelines. And when you look at that, those people who are entrepreneurs, like let's say me, my goal is to run full out for another 10 to 15 years or 15 to 20, and then be able to say, okay, we've built this, we've scaled it, we've got a team. I'm 60, 65, somewhere in that range. I'm going to go to working or 4 hours a day, 2 to 4 hours a day. Like what I've realized watching guys like Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett, like you need something to keep that ticker going. So, because that allows you to keep living. And so going in and just hanging out with the people I work with that I enjoy spending time with, and then pursuing whatever I want in life, taking more vacation, etc. But where I go with that entrepreneurship is people who feel like they've got that independence, but then you look at that point where you say, well, wait a second, can your business run without you being there 30 to 40 hours a week or 20 hours a week? Because if it can't, you're still technically, like not technically, but you're basically an employee still. What do you think of that argument?
Yeah. This really gets my blood boiling, actually. And you hear this a lot on social media. These entrepreneur pimps, I guess, is what I like to call them, where it's like, oh, I don't work for somebody else. I work for me. I work for myself. I develop my own hours. It's all about me. And Okay, for some businesses that might be true. But guess what? When you're an entrepreneur, and there's nothing wrong with being an entrepreneur by any means, but let's set the record straight here. When you're an entrepreneur, you are still working for money, which means you still need customers. You still need clients. You are working for them. You are not working for you. Your boss might be different. Absolutely. But you are not working for you if you need customers and clients to pay your bills. Period. No doubt about it. I'm getting worked up. I'm getting fired up just right now because of this topic. But again, I cannot stress this enough. I am not anti-entrepreneurship. I love entrepreneurship. But you're also not just going to replace a 9 to 5 where you're working 40 hours a week to building your own company on the side and working 5 hours a day and making 120 grand a year. That's not how it works. Over half of businesses fail in the first 3 years anyway. You're going to be working your ass until you get to that point where I can start outsourcing this. I could hire a COO or a director or a president or whatever to basically do the work. And then I sit back and do nothing and collect paychecks. That's a great position to be in. But it's after a number of years, usually decades, in order to get to that point. So entrepreneurship is great, but don't necessarily think it's going to just automatically mean that you get to set your own hours and you don't have to do anything you don't want to do. If you still need the money, you are always going to be working for somebody in some way.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I math out our situation, Steve, I look at it and say, it'll be about 4 to 5 years where I'm behind having quit my job. I was making, and when we're on Fired Up, I'll share actual numbers. I'll be more open. I'll have left my contracting role. I'll be more open. But the amount of money I was making, like, it's going to take me a while to get there. Then 4 to 5 years, I'll probably be roughly at par between salary, dividends, net worth appreciation of the business, which is fine because I don't need all the cash because I wasn't spending it all. I was investing a large portion. So if I leave some behind in the company, I'm better off, right? And then from thereafter, it's exponentially better. But that's what you just said. Like, that's a decade. And I know that, but people talk about like leaving your job as this like holy grail. And I'm like, well, fuck, it's going to take me a decade to earn what I earn in my job. I could be very wealthy just staying in this job for another 15 years till I'm 60 and retire with over $10 million in the bank. So I'm throwing that away to pursue this. And the average person who hears these entrepreneur pimps, they don't do the mental math of, well, shit, like there's a big chance I may actually be better off just staying at my job. But let's pivot. Let's pivot, because what I'm doing is I'm doing habit one. I'm saying yes to a risk. And why I like your habit one is whenever any young person asks me how to get ahead in their career, my number one answer I always give is get yourself into as many sink or swim situations as you possibly can, and then swim, baby, swim. And that's Richard Branson always said, when someone asks you to do something, say yes, and then figure it out. And you did that early in your career. When someone said, Steve, we want you to be the new director. And you were like, shit, I didn't even think I was going to be shift supervisor yet, but let's do it. So why don't you talk about why saying yes is so important early in our careers? Because one might argue as we get ahead in life, it starts to be more important to learn to say no. But early in our career, why is yes so important in our vocabulary?
When we're young, we have the energy to figure shit out. As we get older, we're probably doing less of that anyway because we've already figured it out because of the decisions that we made in our 20s. But your 20s is not the time to play it safe because you have so much time to recover if things don't go the way you want them to. But like you said, Clint, this is the time to get in a little over your head. And I was this 33, 34-year-old dude, software developer. I just wrote code for a living. This Friday, my boss calls me and wants me to be the director of the entire IT department of like 30, 35 people. And it's like, I've had zero. I had no leadership experience. I mean, bupkis, nothing. And now it's like I'm going from a software developer to a director, not just a manager, not just a lead, a shift super, a director, where I'm like dressing up, going to directors meetings, managing multi-million-dollar budgets, zero experience. And I so wanted to say no, but I said, fuck it, let's say I'm saying yes. I'm doing this. I'm learning as I go. But the important thing that happened, because I said yes, is it set my salary trajectory on a whole other level. Software developers do make good money. There's no doubt about that. But once you elevate up to management, where you're in a director role, you're in a, senior director, vice president, president, those are the roles where salary and equity and stock options, those things just explode. So from that point on, my salary was on a much higher level because I said yes to that opportunity I did not feel ready for. Saying yes is always going to be your key when you're young. Say yes to everything and then go back and say no to the things that aren't working out. It's like this isn't working out quite the way I expected to. I'm sorry, I have to step back. Sometimes that's going to be hard. I totally get it. But the things that you said yes to that work, those are going to make you money. Those are going to expand your professional network. Those are going to make you smarter and way more experienced than you ever were before. And that's going to make you a way more lucrative career in whatever field you happen to be in.
For the listeners who are saying, well, that's bullshit and blah, 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 what I can share, Steve, is having grown to that CFO role in industry, in managing teams of 30 plus people, in taking people who were accountants when they started with me and now are senior vice presidents of finance, what always differentiated people for me was yes people versus no people. Mm-hmm. Because the no people, you stop giving things to. The yes people, you always go to. And yes, that does mean that maybe they get a little overwhelmed. And then your job as the leader becomes to pull stuff off their plate and hand it to the no people and say, I don't give a shit if you're a no person, like you're going to do this. But those yes people, because they're always saying yes, they're earning your trust and they're getting more experience. They're getting more skills. They're developing themselves so that when that promotion becomes available, your first instinct is never to go to the no person. It's always to go to the yes person. And that brings us to your number, it might not be number 2, but that brings us to grow your income. Why is that so important? And for you, what are the 3 top ways you would say to the person that's listening? What are 3 ways they should have in their back pocket that they should always be thinking about so that they can grow their income? Obviously, we've already said, say yes, say yes, say yes is a clear path. What are 2 or 3 other things that will help someone grow their income?
Yep. So as you learned from the wealth building timeline, everything starts from income. The more income you make, the richer that you stand to be, as long as you don't just spend everything that you make, that is. The best way that I have found throughout my entire career to keep my income going up is switching companies. Now, the question of whether you're switching too often or not, that's going to depend on your industry. It's not all going to be the same. But for me, in the IT industry, turnover is kind of expected. So I switched every 3 to 4 years, I'd say. Max. That's the longest, like 4 years is the longest that I've ever spent at any one company. And each time I switched companies, I got a 20-ish% raise every single time. So if you're only relying on that 2, 3, 4% cost of living adjustments that you'll get by staying with the same company, you are leaving money on the table. There will be exceptions. There will be some of you out there going, oh, I stayed with the same company for 25 years and I make, $200 million a year. Great. But most people don't do that. That's not the way it works for the vast majority of the people. Vast majority. You have to move around. Not only are you going to make more money, but you're going to get practice interviewing, talking to people. You're going to become more confident. You're going to learn new ways of doing business, not just one way that one company that you spent 20 years at did it, and you have no idea about any other way of doing business but that way. That's not a good position to be in. And you are going to expand your network. You're going to meet new people at all these different companies. And there's no downside to switching companies regularly, as long as you're not switching too much. And that's that little gray area. And I would say, always demand what you are worth. Don't be afraid to ask for more money. It's hard. It really is. It's nerve-wracking. It's like, what if they say no? What if they think I'm not a team player? Am I going to ruin my promotion chance? Very, very rarely will you get into that situation. If you are objective and you don't go into this conversation in an emotional kind of stand. Do your research. Do your due diligence. Know what other people are getting in similar roles at other companies. And to do that, look at job recs out there, job openings for similar jobs. If they're paying their people more, you probably have cause to maybe ask for a little bit more money at your current employer. Never be hesitant to do that, and pick your time wisely. Like if your company is going through layoffs or something, probably not the best time to ask for more money. Or if the shit just hit the fan, the project failed, or you made a mistake on something, whatever, probably not the right time to ask. But if things are going well, you just finished a great project, the company's doing well, and you think you are underpaid and you can prove that you're underpaid, ask for a meeting, get that conversation started, because you'll be surprised at how many times you eventually get the answer.
Let me emphasize something on this one, because it's always an important one for me, because what you learn when you start to look at the science, I mean, we're talking about the concept of no ask, no get, right?
That's
right.
You
don't ask, you're not going to get it.
Yep.
And what you realize when you look at the science, you and me, science backs up we're more likely to ask for what we deserve. Partially because we're middle-aged, good-looking white men. I threw that good-looking in for us, Steve. If they watch the YouTube, they might debate us. If they just listen to our voices, they'll probably believe us. But so we're more likely to ask. And if you're a boss, the white dudes on your team, they're going to come ask for money. It's just what happens. Who less often ask for money are women and people of color. So a perfect example, I have a lot of Asian women on my team. Super hardworking, very smart women, less likely to ask for money. So when we talk about that, it's very important that people who are listening don't just rely on your work. Rely on your work combined with self-advocacy. I've been pushing this with my boys. My boys are half Chinese, so they look more Chinese than they do white boys. And I've been pushing them to learn the importance of self-advocacy, because when they get into their career, when they're playing sports, Steve, if you don't go to your coach and say, Coach, I want to move from the offensive side of the ball to the defensive side, he's not going to make that change for you.
Yep.
You have to learn to go talk to your coach and ask for what you want. You have to learn to go talk to your boss and ask for what you want. And for a lot of young women and a lot of people of color, or culturally, like Asian cultures, tend to be more, my work will speak for itself. No, It fucking won't. Unless you have a boss who's watching out for you, I can tell you that bosses are in rooms and they're saying, hey, if people don't ask, don't bring it up.
Yep.
And it's bullshit. So I want you who are listening to advocate for yourself. Sorry, Steve, that one really gets to me. What else is on the grow your income list?
For me, it also comes down to making yourself more educated, more knowledgeable. So that might mean going back to college and getting a degree if that makes sense in your career path, or going to conferences and learning about something new, or heck, even starting a side hustle, something on the side. So you have your full-time job and you're making good money, then you're using some of those resources to start that side business on the side. That is going to grow your income, especially if that side business does well. And if it does well enough, then guess what? that might become your new full-time job. You quit your 9 to 5 and you now become an entrepreneur in your was side hustle. Now it's your business. Those things all add up to increasing that income. The higher you can get that number, and then the smarter decisions you make with all that money, that's just going to tick the years off of your working career from 65 to 60 to 50 to 40, whatever. Each smart decision that you make, every, additional $1,000 you make, think of that as cutting the required work years from your career. That's such an important thing. I think for people it's an easy way for people to think about this. The more money you make, the less you'll have to work. So in your 20s, while you're young, if you can get that money up, if you can get that income up, that, your side hustle, your networks, your knowledge, your degrees, your certifications, that's just going to tick those years down, man. And once you're at that point, and I think it's going to come sooner than you probably think, you're going to be like, wow, look at all those zeros in my net worth. And we're spending this much money, and I really don't like what I'm doing. My plan was to retire at 55, but I'm 52 now. I think I can make this work today. Just imagine being in that position. I think I can quit and do whatever I want to do today. It all comes from setting up that foundation, letting it work over time, and then getting to that point where you can finally pull the plug.
And then if you look at it, Steve, I would also throw in to the list, become a content creator. And part of why I say that is if you are watching this on YouTube or you're listening to the podcast and you're hearing Steve and I speak to each other, if you didn't know that I was an accountant by trade and Steve was an IT guy by trade, you wouldn't guess that. We've worked hard to be able to be behind the camera and understand the angles and understand how we're looking at each other and the equipment that we're using, the way we enunciate our words. We also, if you follow us on social media, you'll see how Steve writes and how I write. Very similar styles, short, tight, punchy, but we're able to communicate complicated topics simply. And why I bring that up, Steve, is you talked earlier about getting into leadership. And if you're an accountant like I was, or an IT guy like you were, but you're a better public speaker than everybody around you, you're a better writer, you're a better communicator, who's more likely to get that promotion? The accountant who's good at the numbers, or the person who can actually talk to the president, the person who can have a conversation with the vice presidents and can put things in writing and can communicate complex topics simply. So I think young people, if they're able to do what you and I did with our social media and with what we're doing now with podcasting and writing and content creation, this wasn't available when you were young. This wasn't available when I was young. I mean, you're younger than I am, so it was closer to available for you, but not really. It's only been the last decade. If this was available 20 years ago, 25 years ago, I would have been on it right away. And I would have chronicled my entire journey, and I would have gone faster because of the skills that I built through doing this.
Yep. I was never the smartest person in the office, ever. There was always people more handsome than me, as hard as that is to believe, smarter than me, harder working than me. They got to the office before. I was never that top guy ever in my entire career, any place I worked. But yet I still continued to get promotions. I still continued to get raises. Why? It wasn't because of my intellect. Yes, I wasn't dumb, but it wasn't because of my intellect. It was because of how I worked with people, how I communicated with them. I was very easy to get along with. I never said, no, I don't really want to do that project. I always just took it and figured it out. We've already been over some of these concepts, but I think it's important for people to understand that to get ahead in life, you do not have to be the smartest person. You do not have to be the strongest person. You do not have to be the best looking person. Nobody wants to work with jerks. People want to work with people who are positive, who smile, who are easy to work with, who laugh, who tell jokes. I mean, they still get their job done, but that's not all of it. It's how easy it is for you to get along with one another. And that's, the popular term is now EQ, or emotional intelligence. That side of it, I think, gets way less focus than I would like advancing the corporate ladder. That gets less emphasis, less focus than I think it deserves. Because in my personal experience, and probably yours as well, Clint, from what I'm hearing, that EQ, or how you work with people, how you communicate with people, was at least as important as what you knew.
Yeah, that was fixing the EQ was the last decade of my career, maybe the last 12 years. And that's when I went from making good money to holy shit, someone's paying me this, right? So like starting at a number that people were happy would be like, oh man, I never thought I'd make this much money, to a number that was 3 times that, 3.5 times that. It's mind boggling. And it was the EQ, because that's what could take me from that director to the VP to the chief financial officer.
Absolutely.
You can't get there if you're only IQ. You have to have the EQ, because you have to be able to work with everybody in the organization, from the accounts payable team, from the janitor right to the president. You have to be able to have a relationship with everyone on that chain. And that's all EQ. So now people have grown their income. They've implemented some of what we talked about in the conversation. They've read the book. They've grown their income to a big number. But we both know those idiots who have huge income and they're still poor because they just like blow everything.
Yep.
Now, you look at the way my wife and I lived our lifestyle. Like, my family would always be like, wow, like you spend so much money. And I'm always like, well, A, you don't know how much I make. And B, you don't know that I pay myself first. So like, I take a bunch of dough out, I invest it, it's gone, it's making money for me. Whatever I have left over, I do whatever the F I want with it, because that's the game. So they didn't know that, because I'm like, I'm not going to tell you all these things. But it brings up the concept of pay yourself first. So how does pay yourself first work? And what do you recommend for target numbers? Because to achieve FIRE, some of us get to that 40, 50, 60, 70% savings rates. And you get to it's easier to get to the bigger savings rates when you grow the income, right? Like when you're on your $50,000 entry level, or like maybe $40,000 entry level salary, $50,000. It's really hard to save 70% of your salary, because you like, and is it before tax or after tax? Like, you get what I mean, right? But when you're making $200,000 a year and you didn't inflate your lifestyle and you're paying yourself first, you can take a much bigger shovel clip of that money first. So do you want to take people through that and what the concept is, what you recommend, and how that recommendation changes as you earn more income?
Absolutely. Pay yourself first means you don't have to budget. A lot of people hate budgeting. I don't like budgeting either, quite frankly. But pay yourself first flips the traditional method of money management completely on its head. The concept is you are paying your bills first. So you get your paycheck in. From that paycheck, you immediately fund the things that need to be funded. So your rent or mortgage, your cell phone bill, your food, whatever, that money just comes out immediately, right? And that's going to be spent. So that's done. Then comes your spending that is monthly, like it comes out every month, but it's not necessarily consistent. So your groceries, your restaurants, even clothes, things like that. So you have your necessary, has to be done. Then you have the probably should be done. And then you have everything else. So the idea is the should be done shouldn't be big, right? So you have your monthly bills, traditional monthly bills, mortgage, cell phones, that kind of thing. That's all done. Good. You never have to worry about a bill for the rest of your life. Then you have a little bit more on the things that you still need, but fluctuate. Like, we never spend the exact same amount of money at the grocery store every single time we go. But if you track that, then you'll be able to cut back on the things that you think you're spending a little bit more money on than you probably should. Then everything left over is yours. It's free money. You can spend that shit guilt free. You don't have to worry about it. And the key is the higher your salary is, right? The lower your lifestyle spending is, your requirements, right? Your bills means the more you're going to have left for you. So increase that income, decrease that spending, and there you go. You have a lot of cash left over every single month where you just don't have to feel bad about spending it. That is the beauty of pay yourself first. Get the bills taken care of. Get your investments and your savings all taken care of. I didn't mention investments and savings before, but that's a critical element that kind of comes in between the monthly bills and the guilt-free spending. Monthly bills, investments, then your guilt-free spending. Everything else is your money to spend however you like.
And automate it as much as possible, right? So you don't even see
Absolutely.
it. You don't even realize I'm making 200 grand a year after tax. Let's make it after tax, or 240.
Yep.
Make it simple. I'm getting 20 grand a month. And I just clip 50% of that straight into my investment accounts. Never even see that it went there. So I'm still living off a really enjoyable 10 grand a month to pay all my bills. And meanwhile, I just put $100,000, $120,000 into investments. Like, that's the way you're going to supercharge your ability to retire early.
Absolutely. There's no question about it.
Okay, one last question, my friend. I know you've got a hard stop in 7 minutes, so this one we'll chew on a little together and chop it up on. Is millionaires create their own luck? And you have a lot of ways you list. This is one of the ones you go deep, and it's something you and I really believe in, is that you get there on your own volition if you do these 10 to 20 things, and you and I talk about them a lot together. I want you to pick a couple that you want to chew on, and I'll throw at you work hard and build a network. So we get your wheels spinning on which ones you really want to dive into, and let's also talk about work hard and build a network, and we'll wrap up there, Steve.
Absolutely. Yeah, luck. I do believe in luck. There is a component of luck in getting rich and being successful. I totally get that. However, that component is way, way, way less, I think, than a lot of people think it is. A lot of people think that most millionaires just inherit their wealth. It is luck. It's just the luck of where you were born or the parents you were born to. The numbers clearly show that is absolutely not the case. In the past, inheritance was a bigger component of building wealth. Today, it's not. It's just not. It does happen, but the vast majority of millionaires got rich because they worked for it. They provided value. One of the best keys, the biggest keys that to become a millionaire that we've already talked about is just say yes and be a decent person. Saying yes gives you opportunities. Those opportunities are going to build your network, build your intelligence, build your experience, and yes, build that wealth. And just being an easy person to get along with, I mean, that alone will make you are going to attract money when you are the happiest person in the office. Yes, you can't, just be happy but not do your job, or be happy and not come in. Obviously, you can't do that. You have to actually do your job, right? But with a smile on your face, like you said before, Clint, when promotion time comes around, who's going to get those opportunities? Who's going to get that money? Who's going to get the chance to move up to the next step in their career? It's not going to be the person that nobody wants to work with. It's not going to be that asshole that says no to everything. It's just not. It's going to be that person, not necessarily the smartest person in the office, but the person who can get things done and work with people and make people want to work for them and do the best job that they possibly can. Finding great leaders is how businesses run. And being a great leader is how you are going to pad that income, the very first step of that wealth building equation.
Well, that's an important one, because a lot of people don't realize that, we talked about building your income. We talked about becoming a leader. And you just pointed out a good thing, that the higher you can grow in leadership, the more income you're going to make. And the way you achieve those next levels of leadership is often not through yourself, but through the people below you. You know, that concept of hiring your replacement, but then investing in those people to the level where they lift you up, because they're like, hey, I'll go to hell for you. Like I'll go through a wall for you because you care about me. You invest in me personally, professionally, financially, and you've demonstrated that I want to work for you. And so when you build a team like that, you can't help but climb the ladder, and that means you make more money.
Absolutely. I've worked with leaders where I could have taken shortcuts. I could have taken off early. I could have said, oh, this is good enough. But I respected that leader enough where I went the extra mile and I went from a 90% effort to a 100% effort because I liked the person I worked with. They were good leaders. They looked out for me. And therefore, I, as their underling, was going to look out for them. I've also worked with guys who just weren't great. They were there because they were the smartest at what they did. They were there. I'm going to repeat that. They were there in that position because they were the smartest. That was a bad promotion because they could not work with people. They could not inspire people. I did not respect that person because of how that person treats their employees, their subordinates. And I'm not going to go above and beyond for people like that. Even if you are smart, that's great. Love it. High IQ, wonderful. Good on you. But if you can't inspire those under you, guess what? I'm not going to do my best work for you. I'm going to do my best work for somebody who I respect and knows respects me.
Love it. Steve, 2 minutes to go before we wrap this up. We went pretty wide. We went pretty deep. There's so much more for people to get out of the book. Is there any last parting message you want to leave people with?
I will leave with something that I started with at the very beginning. Regardless of what your goal is, in this case, it was to become a millionaire, but regardless of what your goal is, you have to believe that it could be done, and you can't forget about that goal. So what I would recommend you do is write on an index card with a big fat black Sharpie exactly what your goal is. $1,000,000 or whatever it is. Make it short and sweet, and paste that sucker, tape it up to your fridge, put it on your nightstand, whatever you have to do. So every day you are looking at that. You are looking at that goal, and it's like, yes, that is why I got up this morning. I am going to do this. I'm going to accomplish this. Every single day, you keep that in the forefront of your mind, and that's going to keep you determined. That's going to keep you motivated to continue pushing forward, to continue doing your best work, to continue saying yes to some of these opportunities that you might not feel ready for, but you know what you're doing it for. You know the reason. You know the light at the end of the tunnel. If the end of the tunnel is black or dark, you're not going to go very fast. You're going to have no motivation to continue forward. But when you see that little pinprick of light, and especially when it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, that means you're getting closer and closer and closer. And when that happens, your energy, your confidence, your motivation just explodes. And that all starts with knowing what your long-term goal is, writing it down and keeping it right in front of your face every single day so you never forget about it.
Man, that was powerful. I love it. Where can people find you, my friend?
I am on Twitter, or X, thanks Elon Musk, a lot at Steve on Speed. The on speed part was because I drove a Corvette in a previous life, has nothing to do with drugs. I should have changed that handle long time ago, but I missed the boat on that one. And I have a newsletter called Millionaire Habits. Millionairehabits.us is the website for that big content system over there. So those are the two places that you can find me, and I will be pretty active.
All right, my friend, that was a really fun time to talk to you as
Absolutely.
always. And go about your day, and I look forward to catching up and reigniting, fired up. Maybe we'll get you as fired up on the show as we did when we talked about a couple of the topics today. Like I will remember to bring up
Entrepreneurship, yeah.
entrepreneurial pimps. because that fired
love
you
it.
up, my friend. Thank you.
I was ready. Yep. Yeah. Thank you for having me on, Clint. It was an honor, and onward and upward, my friend.
Beauty.
If you like the podcast, you'll love our new newsletter, The Growth Guide. Every Thursday, straight to your inbox, with the goal to help you be better, achieve more, and become financially free. Check it out at our website, thegrowth.guide. Subscribe and learn more.